Hello, welcome to your Ethics in Action training. My name is Lucia and I serve as Director of Organizational Development and Training here. This training is designed to equip every employee with the knowledge, tools, and awareness to contribute to an ethical workplace culture. Over the next several minutes, we'll explore why ethics is the foundation of organizational trust, how codes of conduct and laws set boundaries, and what role each of us plays in sustaining an environment of fairness, respect, and responsibility. Ethics is more than just compliance with the law. It's about purpose, values, and culture. As leaders and employees, our daily decisions define who we are as an organization. The purpose of this session is not only to reduce risks, but to help all of us see ethics as a shared responsibility that protects our reputation, strengthens our community, and reflects our integrity. An ethical workplace culture matters because it drives trust, engagement, and long-term success. When values are clear and consistently applied, we as employees feel more secure in decision making and more connected to our work. Research on the values change management cycle highlights that ethical leadership and culture make change easier because they reduce resistance, mistrust, and fear of uncertainty, according to Payne, Trumbach, and Soharu, 2022. When decisions are guided by fairness and transparency, we can adapt more confidently, even during times of change. The values change management cycle also suggests best practices for embedding ethics in organizational systems. Leaders should use checkpoints to ensure transparency, participation, and accountability during change efforts. For example, align values with leadership behavior. When employees see consistency, their commitment rises. Address resistance ethically. Fear of change decreases in culture where trust and communication are prioritized. Lead by example. Leaders' visible attitudes toward change set the tone for how followers respond. Without an ethical culture, our organization risks disengagement, cynicism, and misconduct. As Weiss from 2022 reminds us, when organizations focus only on short-term financial gains, they lack the deeper foundation that sustains trust and credibility. But when ethics are lived out, they provide resilience and trust with stakeholders. This is how an ethical culture protects us as employees, strengthens our reputation, and allows the organization to succeed long-term. As you can see, ethics isn't just about avoiding risk, it's about building resilience, purpose, and meaning into how we work. And this leads us to the importance of values. Let's talk about the core values that sustain ethical culture: honesty, transparency, accountability, fairness, and respect. These are values that will guide our daily behavior. They're not merely abstract ideals. But values don't stand alone. They gain power when connected to purpose. Purpose and values give employees a sense of meaning. Collins and Porras in 1994 argued in Built to Last that great companies endure because they clarify, quote, fundamental reasons for existence beyond making money, end quote. Likewise, David Packard, co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, asked leaders to always consider, why are we here? That deeper reflection ensures decisions are anchored in integrity, not just in profit. Purpose matters because it gives direction during challenges. When values are tied to purpose, such as serving communities, advancing innovation, or protecting the environment, employees find meaning, customers trust the organization, and the company builds resilience. Leaders like JetBlue's David Neeleman modeled this when he said, quote, I treat everyone the same. I don't give anyone more deference because of their position or status, end quote. That's from Neeleman as cited in Weiss, 2022. When values are consistently lived out, they shape a workplace where respect and inclusion are the norm, not exceptions, and where all of us can see the why behind our work. A code of conduct translates values into clear standards. It sets expectations for behavior around conflicts of interest, confidentiality, respect, and compliance with laws. Our code of conduct does more than protect the organization legally. It will empower us as employees to make ethical choices when facing uncertainty. It provides a shared language for accountability. For example, if someone observes misuse of resources or favoritism, the code clarifies what steps to take. As Weiss 2022 explains, leadership requires alignment with both ethics and law. And our code of conduct is one way we achieve that alignment. Ethical boundaries must be modeled by leadership and integrated into culture. Put more broadly, codes of conduct are not just rules, they're cultural anchors. They create consistency across departments, fairness across roles, and alignment between what the organization says and what it actually does. When codes are applied equally, whether to frontline employees, managers, or executives, they build credibility and trust. When they are ignored or inconsistently enforced, they undermine the very culture they are meant to protect. It's important to remember a code of conduct is a living document. It only has meaning when reinforced by training, recognition of ethical behavior, and accountability for violations. In that way, the code is both a safeguard against misconduct and a roadmap toward the kind of workplace culture we all want to be a part of. Failing to establish ethical standards can have serious legal consequences. Organizations without a code risk lawsuits, regulatory fines, and even loss of licenses and contracts. Some of the most common legal risks include employment discrimination under Title VII, wage and hour violations under the Fair Labor Standards Act, according to the EEOC, and privacy violations under regulations like GDPR or HIPAA. Beyond fines, there are reputational costs. Once an organization is seen as unethical or careless, rebuilding trust is expensive and can be impossible. Reputations are among an organization's most prized assets, and they are built through conscientious stakeholder relationships, according to Farrell et al. 2021. A weak or absent code undermines the foundation. So while code of conduct protect against legal exposure, their greater purpose is to prevent harm before it occurs and to preserve trust with both employees and external stakeholders. Let's review some of the most common legal requirements that shape our workplace. Discrimination and harassment remain top risks under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Organizations must provide equal opportunity, protect against retaliation, and maintain safe reporting processes, according to the EEOC. Another common legal issue is wage and hour violations, which often occur under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Misclassification of employees, unpaid overtime, or failure to provide required breaks are frequent causes of litigation. Finally, privacy and data security are critical concerns. With laws such as GDPR and HIPAA, organizations face significant penalties for mishandling personal data. As technology advances, cybersecurity breaches now carry not only financial risks, but ethical risks for violating trust. Farrell et al. 2021 emphasize that leaders are responsible for, quote, modeling the legal and ethical tone and boundaries, end quote, of the firm. By understanding these legal frameworks, organizations can prevent violations that damage both finances and reputation. But here's the key. Compliance with the law is only the starting point. To create an ethical workplace culture, we also need to look at the issues that may not break laws, but still break trust. That brings us to ethical issues. While legal issues are defined by statutes, ethical issues often live in gray areas of judgment and culture. We might see favoritism and nepotism where leaders reward friends or family at the expense of fairness, or misuse of resources such as company funds or time. A particularly harmful issue is retaliation against employees who report wrongdoing, which undermines psychological safety. These actions may not always be illegal, but they corrode trust, reduce morale, and damage our culture. Ethical challenges often arise in business relationships that involve moral courage, according to Farrell et al. 2021. For example, leaders deciding whether to cut corners on environmental safety face not just a financial decision, but an ethical one with long-term consequences. These ethical issues often arise in the gray zones where laws don't provide full guidance. In 2023, Global Business Ethics Survey found that many employees report high levels of pressure, increased observations of misconduct, and troubling rates of retaliation against whistleblowers, according to ECI 2023. This is a warning for us that culture must address not just compliance, but everyday behavior. Weiss 2022 emphasizes that leaders and employees alike face decisions that require moral courage, especially in times of crisis or uncertainty. And if we don't have frameworks to guide us, those decisions can become inconsistent or self-serving. That's why we turn next to ethical decision-making models, which help us navigate those gray areas with clarity. So, how do we move from simply spotting issues to making good decisions about them? That's where ethical decision-making frameworks come in. Ethics has been guided traditionally by three approaches: duty-based ethics, which prioritizes obligation to honesty, accountability, and respect, regardless of consequences, according to Weiss 2022. Virtue ethics focuses on aligning actions with personal and organizational character and values. And utilitarianism, which asks what choice creates the greatest good for the greatest number. Building on utilitarian thinking, Max Bazerman 2020 suggests that leaders move beyond simple rules like don't lie or don't cheat, and instead focus on creating the most value for society. This perspective blends philosophy with behavioral science. Kahneman 2011, Thinking Fast and Slow, shows why this matters. Our fast, intuitive, or System 1 thinking can lead to biased or inconsistent choices, while our slower, System 2, deliberative thinking supports more ethical, rational outcomes. Bazerman applies this to ethics, urging leaders to engage their deliberative thinking. For example, by comparing options instead of judging in isolation, or by using Rawls's 1971 veil of ignorance to reduce self-interest. Alongside these approaches, practical models like the PLUS framework or regret minimizing strategies give us everyday tools to evaluate choices. The goal is consistency and fairness so that ethical behavior isn't left to chance, but is built into how we make decisions. Leaders such as Warren Buffett and Ratan Tata exemplify how values, strategy, and ethical boundaries can guide consistent decision making, according to Farrell et al. 2021. By practicing ethical problem solving, we as employees reduce risks of misconduct and foster a culture of fairness, consistency in areas like hiring, negotiations, and managing our time. Ethics extend beyond the walls of our workplace through social responsibility. Another way of saying that is how we as an organization give back to the communities we serve. Corporate social responsibility, or CSR, reflect reflects how we balance profit with the well-being of employees, communities, and our environment. CSR isn't just symbolic, it has measurable value. Research shows that diversified CSR efforts across areas like environment, community, and governance actually increase firm value and resilience, even during crises. This highlights that stakeholders reward companies that demonstrate genuine responsibility, according to Bousla et al. 2023. But the way organizations approach CSR makes all the difference. Consider Ben & Jerry's. Their commitment to environmental sustainability and social justice is embedded in their business model. They reinvest profits into activism, use fair trade ingredients, and openly advocate for causes like climate action and racial equality. Their social responsibility efforts are consistent, transparent, and clearly tied to their value. By contrast, Amazon has made high-profile donations and sustainability pledges, but it has also faced criticism in Seattle and beyond for its impact on housing affordability, worker conditions, and aggressive market practices. This shows how CSR that appears reactive or inconsistent can create skepticism, even when financial contributions are significant. The lesson for us is that CSR isn't just about writing checks or making promises, it's about consistently aligning values with actions so that our reputation reflects genuine care for stakeholders. As employees, we are part of this commitment, whether through volunteering, sustainability efforts, or simply upholding our values in customer interactions. From a stakeholder theory lens, organizations must consider the interests of all groups affected by their actions, not just shareholders, according to Freeman, 1984. This requires balancing competing demands with limited resources. But the long-term benefits include resilience, legitimacy, and stronger reputations. And here's where leadership comes in. Leaders are the ones who turn CSR principles into consistent lived practices. Leaders play a pivotal role in setting the ethical tone because they are the primary source of learning for employees. Research defines ethical leadership as leaders modeling appropriate conduct and reinforcing it through daily communication, accountability, and decision making, according to Brown et al. 2005. Employees learn through social learning. Employees observe, imitate, and internalize leaders' behaviors. When leaders demonstrate honesty, fairness, and respect, they model what is acceptable, and when they fail, employees notice and culture suffers. Jim Collins' Good to Great showed that the most effective leaders embodied what he termed Level 5 leadership, a blend of humility and fierce resolve. Those leaders channel ambition away from themselves and toward building enduring greatness. That's from Collins, as cited in Farrell et al. 2021. In practice, this means leaders modeling ethical behavior, building credibility, encouraging psychological safety, and holding themselves accountable. These leaders create cultures where employees feel empowered to voice concerns, innovate, and grow. Leadership is also inseparable from change management. Payne et al. 2022 argue that culture is the hardest thing to shift, yet ethical leaders lower resistance and mistrust by fostering fairness and transparency. The values change management cycle shows that when ethics are integrated into every stage of organizational change, employees are more likely to embrace transformation with confidence. Great leaders don't just talk about ethics, they demonstrate it consistently. By doing so, they inspire trust, commitment in others, and the resilience needed to sustain ethical success over time. This brings us to the role of employees. Each of us contributes to maintaining an ethical workplace, and I'll explain how. While leaders model the culture, we as employees play an equally important role in maintaining an ethical workplace. Ethics doesn't just flow from the top down, it's lived out in everyday decisions and behaviors. Weiss 2022 emphasizes that leadership exists throughout the organizations, not only in the CEO's office. Each of us has influence in our roles and relationships. When we act with honesty, fairness, and accountability, we reinforce a culture that others notice and follow. Employees reinforce ethical culture by respecting diversity, reporting concerns responsibly, and holding ourselves accountable. This not only supports our leaders, but also ensures that our workplace reflects fairness and inclusion at every level. In other words, leadership and employees work together in a cycle. Leadership sets the vision and model values, while employees bring those values to life. That partnership is what makes an ethical culture sustainable. When each of us commits to doing the right thing, we create a culture that is stronger than any policy alone. Diversity and inclusion, or D&I, are not just HR initiatives. They are pillars of an ethical workplace. A strong D&I culture ensures fairness, equity, and respect for all individuals, regardless of background, identity, or beliefs. Research also shows that diverse teams outperform peers in innovation, decision-making, and adaptability, according to McKinsey 2022. More importantly, embracing diversity is an ethical imperative. It ensures fairness, equity, and respect for all individuals, regardless of background, identity, or beliefs. When organizations embrace D&I authentically, it becomes a competitive advantage and a moral imperative. Patagonia, for example, is widely recognized for embedding inclusiveness into its culture. Its on-site childcare programs, equitable parental leave, and commitment to diverse hiring have not only improved employee well-being, but also delivered measurable returns on investment. One study showed a 91% retention rate among working mothers due to these policies, according to Mercario 2016. Organizations like REI demonstrate this through programs such as #OptOutside, which emphasize not only environmental ethics, but also inclusiveness and employee well-being. A strong D&I program builds belonging, reduces discrimination, and strengthens trust between employees and the organization. Contrast this with companies that neglect or mishandle D&I. In recent years, several high-profile firms, including Google and Tesla, have faced lawsuits and public backlash over allegations of systemic discrimination and hostile work environments. In these cases, the lack of consistent D&I practices damaged reputation, employee trust, and even shareholder value. The takeaway is clear. A diversity and inclusion program must go beyond compliance to be effective. When we as employees actively support and respect differences, we help create a workplace where everyone can thrive. And when leaders back this up with authentic policies, D&I becomes a source of trust, innovation, and long-term success. In short, diversity and inclusion are both a moral responsibility and a strategic advantage. To bring all the ideas we've discussed together, here are best practices for embedding ethics into daily organizational life. Think of these not as one-time actions, but as a workflow that keeps ethics alive and healthy. Build and maintain a living code of conduct. Review and update it regularly. Integrate it into training, onboarding, and performance conversations so it becomes a shared language for decision-making. Implement high-quality ethics and compliance programs. Go beyond a written policy or hotline. Programs should include manager training, practical decision-making tools, and clear alignment with organizational values. Provide secure reporting and protection. Employees must know where to turn when they see misconduct. This means regularly reminding staff of reporting channels and developing formal anti-retaliation programs to protect whistleblowers. Safety in speaking up is the foundation of trust. Ensure accountability at all levels. Apply standards consistently, whether to executives or frontline staff. Tie ethics to performance reviews, promotions, and recognition. When ethical behavior is rewarded and misconduct is addressed, the message is clear. Ethics is integral to success. Recognize and reinforce ethical leadership everywhere. Credibility grows when employees see leaders and colleagues walking the talk. Small acts of integrity, from daily honesty to fairness in decision making, deserve acknowledgement. Assess and improve continuously. Regularly evaluate compliance programs and culture to measure impact and identify gaps. This keeps ethics from becoming static and shows a commitment to transparency and growth. These practices create a healthy workflow, from structure to safe resources to accountability to reinforcement, and finally to continuous improvement. They ensure that ethics is not an add-on, but a sustained, visible part of how we work and succeed together. Let's recap the key takeaways from this training. Ethics is the foundation of culture, compliance, trust, and community impact. Purpose-driven values give us direction beyond short-term results. A code of conduct provides clarity, sets expectations, and protects against legal and ethical risks. Leadership and employees share responsibility for modeling and sustaining ethical standards. Social responsibility and diversity strengthen reputation, resilience, and long-term value. Best practices, from living codes to anti-retaliation programs, make these commitments real and lasting. As Freeman, 1984, argues, organizations endure when they create value for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. In other words, organizations endure because they serve a purpose beyond making money. They create meaning and value for stakeholders. When ethics is woven into daily decision-making, we avoid risks, but more importantly, we build workplaces where people thrive and communities benefit. I encourage you to take these lessons beyond this training. Ask yourself regularly, do my actions reflect our values? Am I living out our values in how I treat others, make decisions, and represent our organization? When we can answer yes, we're not just protecting our reputation, we're building a workplace and a culture we can all be proud of. This slide contains the references that informed this training. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed the training.